I believe that in a lot of ways, fans were going to these games hanging on, waiting for Caitlin Clark to come back.
WNBA has seen record-breaking numbers this season in viewership, ticket sales, merch sales, and just overall growth of the league. Even with my channel, you guys, I have talked about the WNBA more this season than I ever had, and it has honestly been so much fun to tap into these games and tune into the league.
The Indiana Fever just did the impossible. Not only did they break the WNBA's all-time attendance record, they obliterated it. Over 600,000 fans packed into arenas this season to watch the Fever play. 600,000! That's not just a number, that's a movement. To put this in perspective, the previous record was held way back in 1999 by the Washington Mystics at around 400,000.
Watching her grow throughout the process, watching her get better. Looking forward to actually being able to cheer for her now.
Ever? Cheryl Miller, ever. Maya Moore. I said what I said. Ever. Diana Taurasi. I said what I said. No disrespect.
Getting her teammates involved, and they got so many shooters. I watched them play Louisville, and the way they moved the ball and played off of her was just...
Fans are like, what in the hell are you guys doing? And I understand it. I understand it. The WNBA surpassed its total regular season attendance record Friday, another showcase of the league's continued growth in 2025. The WNBA's previous record of 2,364,000.
The Fever didn't just edge past that, they lapped it. Think about it. Just 1 year ago, Indiana couldn't even fill half their arena. They averaged fewer than 5,000 fans a night. Now, they're selling out 17,000-seat stadiums, breaking records on the road, and turning every single Caitlin Clark appearance into a can't-miss event. This isn't just about basketball anymore. This is about a phenomenon, a cultural shift, a moment in sports history that we may never see again. The question is, how did we get here? And what does this mean for the future of women's basketball?
I saw this tweet recently that put everything into perspective. It's from El Deportista, and he said the WNBA year-to-year attendance. The WNBA has called for growth for several years. Taking a look back at the last 20 years, they've unfortunately been met with a stalemate, but enter 2024 and the Caitlin Clark effect. While there are other rookies who have brought eyes, notably Angel Reese, and many other current superstars who have shined a light on their talents, notably A'ja Wilson, the league has without a doubt been elevated by the attention and spotlight brought in by the logo shooting guard from Indiana.
In this video, we're going to break it all down. How the Fever went from near-empty arenas to the hottest ticket in town. Why Caitlin Clark isn't just a rookie, but a once-in-a-generation force that's changing the economics of an entire league. The jaw-dropping numbers, from attendance and TV ratings to merchandise and sponsorship deals that prove the WNBA is exploding right before our eyes.
When I was watching the last game, and I always tell you guys, look, if there's a game on, then I'm probably in the Ben Daniel podcast TV chat. He's got 2 channels. One, he actually does a watch along, and I'm usually in that chat. Me and CDS Podcast are in that chat. And, you know, seriously, I mean, we're always talking about, like, what is this front office doing? What is their deal with not wanting to play young athletic players? You know, I mean, why is Michaela Timpson not playing a lot of minutes?
And finally, what this record-breaking season means for the Fever, the league, and the future of women's sports. Trust me, by the end of this, you'll see why 2024 isn't just another season, it's the season that changed everything. But before we dive in, let me ask you this. Do you believe Caitlin Clark is single-handedly responsible for this WNBA boom? Or is it bigger than just one player? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading and replying to as many as I can. And hey, if you're new here, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Her Hoops.
The top-selling WNBA player merch, Caitlin Clark, #1 in jersey sales, Angel Reese 2, Sabrina 3, Kate Martin 4. We talked about this earlier in the season. I feel sad that Kate Martin also hasn't gotten as much playing time the second half of the season. I feel like she deserves more, or maybe she deserves a different team. How crazy would that be if she went to Indiana? Just saying. And then #5 on the list is A'ja Wilson. With the WNBA continuing to grow, many people have talked about expansion, and just next season, the WNBA will be adding another team, the Golden State Valkyries.
Over 98% of you watch these videos without subscribing. Don't miss out. It costs you nothing but makes a huge difference for us. Alright, now let's rewind and see just how wild this Fever turnaround really is. To really understand how insane this 600,000 fan record is, you have to go back just 1 year. The Indiana Fever were struggling bad. bad. Their average home attendance? 4,671 fans per game. Not even half the arena filled. Imagine that. Rows of empty seats, a quiet atmosphere, and a franchise desperately clinging to relevance. And it wasn't just Indiana. For years, the WNBA as a whole had been fighting uphill battles, pushing for growth, fighting for media coverage, begging for sponsorships, and trying to capture a mainstream audience that never seemed to stick around. Sure, there were bright spots here and there. Stars like Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, Maya Moore, and Breanna Stewart gave fans highlights. But in terms of sustained national buzz, the league was stuck in neutral. By 2021, things were at a low point. The pandemic had slashed attendance, corporate deals were drying up, and even hardcore women's basketball fans were worried about the league's future. So when the Fever finished another losing season in 2023, nobody, and I mean nobody, thought Indiana was about to become the center of the basketball universe. But then, everything changed. With the #1 overall pick in the 2024 WNBA draft, the Indiana Fever selected Caitlin Clark out of Iowa. And in that moment, the fortunes of an entire franchise, and maybe even an entire league, flipped upside down. Think about this. In 5 home games with Clark, the Fever drew more fans than their entire previous season. That's how powerful this shift was. Here's the thing about what the Fever pulled off this year. Yes, it looks magical now, but at the start, it was a massive gamble. Think about it. Caitlin Clark wasn't just drafted to play basketball, she was drafted to save Indiana's franchise, to be the face of a league fighting for relevance, to carry the weight of expectations so heavy even seasoned pros might have crumbled under it. The Fever had been irrelevant for nearly a decade. Since Tamika Catchings retired, they hadn't had a true superstar. They weren't winning games, they weren't selling tickets, and honestly, they weren't part of the national conversation. You could have asked the average sports fan to name a single Fever player before Clark, and most would have drawn a blank. That's the problem Caitlin Clark walked into. One player expected to do what entire marketing campaigns, league pushes, and years of grinding had failed to accomplish: bring mainstream America to the WNBA. And here's the scary part. If she failed, it wouldn't just hurt the Fever. It would have given every critic of women's basketball the ammunition they'd been waiting for. See? They would have said. Not even Caitlin Clark can save the WNBA. It'll never work. That's the core tension. Could one rookie actually reverse years of struggle? Could she handle the insane hype, the comparisons to LeBron James, the national TV spotlight, the constant media attention? Could she deliver not just numbers on the court, but butts in seats, eyeballs on screens, and dollars in the league's pockets? Because remember, Clark wasn't coming in as just a basketball star. She was walking into the league as a business savior. And here's what makes it even crazier. She didn't just meet those expectations, she blew them out of the water. But before we get into the records she shattered, let's first talk about why the stakes were so unbelievably high. So let's play this out. What if Caitlin Clark hadn't delivered? What if the Fever kept losing, the attendance didn't spike, and the hype fizzled? The fallout would have been brutal. For starters, Indiana might have stayed at the bottom of the league in revenue. We're talking empty seats, limited sponsorships, and a front office struggling to justify big spending. And for a smaller market franchise like Indiana, that's a death sentence. But the ripple effects wouldn't stop there. The WNBA as a whole has been pushing for expansion, higher salaries, charter flights, all things that require serious money. Without fan support and national buzz, those conversations hit a wall. If Clark had stumbled, critics would have pointed to her as the league's last hope and said, "See? Women's basketball can't draw consistent fans, even with a superstar." And remember, women's sports history is full of these almost moments. In 1999, the U.S. women's soccer team filled stadiums after the World Cup, but the professional league that followed folded within 3 years. In the early 2000s, the Houston Comets dynasty was supposed to carry the WNBA into mainstream stardom. 4 titles in a row, yet the franchise folded in 2008, leaving a gap in the league's legacy. Even more recently, when Candace Parker and the Chicago Sky won the championship in 2021, ticket sales rose briefly but never truly transformed the league's economics. The stakes for Caitlin Clark were simple. Don't let this be another almost moment. Because here's the truth. Momentum in women's sports is fragile. One bad season, one failed star push, and years of progress can vanish overnight. Clark had to prove she wasn't just a spark, but a fire that could keep burning. And wow, did she ever? Because instead of fading into just another rookie, Caitlin Clark turned every single Fever game into a traveling rock concert. But before we get into the spectacle, we need to look at the rivals and outside forces shaping this explosion. Here's the wild part. Caitlin Clark and the Fever weren't rising in a vacuum. They were stepping into a league that was already loaded with talent and rival storylines. And those rivalries? They didn't just add fuel to the fire, they turned every game into must-see TV. First up, Angel Reese and the Chicago Sky. This rivalry didn't just start in the WNBA. It started in college, when Reese's LSU squad knocked Clark's Iowa team out of the NCAA championship. That moment went viral. The trash talk, the hand gestures, the fire. Fast forward to the WNBA, and suddenly every Fever versus Sky matchup was billed as a rematch of that classic duel, and fans showed up in droves. One game in Chicago drew 17,000 fans, the biggest crowd in Sky history. That's not a coincidence, that's rivalry magic. Then you've got Las Vegas and New York. The Aces and Liberty aren't just super teams, they're measuring sticks. Whenever Clark played them, the spotlight was blinding. Could this rookie stand up to A'ja Wilson, Breanna Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu, the established superstars of the league? Those games weren't just basketball, they were battles for legitimacy. And let's not forget the outside competition. The NBA, NFL, college football. Caitlin Clark was competing against sports juggernauts for attention. Yet somehow, a Tuesday Night Fever game could trend on Twitter right alongside an NFL training camp update. That's unheard of for women's basketball. Here's the other piece: expansion and free agency. The WNBA is adding teams soon, and stars are moving around more freely. That means players have options. They can chase markets, sponsorships, visibility. Caitlin Clark's explosion puts pressure on every other franchise. Step up your game or get left behind. Because here's the reality: the Fever didn't just gain fans. They forced the entire league to raise its stakes. Rivalries got hotter, super teams got hungrier, and every other rookie coming in now, they know the bar has been set sky high. But here's the question nobody's asking. What happens inside that Fever locker room when one player becomes the story every single night? Now here's the part casual fans don't always see, the human side of this story. Because while 600,000 fans were flooding into arenas, while the Fever were breaking attendance records, and while the media was turning Caitlin Clark into the face of the WNBA, inside that locker room, things weren't always smooth. Think about it. You've got veterans who've been grinding for years. Players who've put their blood, sweat, and tears into this league without ever sniffing Clark's spotlight. Suddenly, a rookie walks in, and every headline, every camera, every commercial is about her. Kelsey Mitchell, Aliyah Boston, Nalissa Smith, these are legit talents. Boston was last year's Rookie of the Year. But guess what? When Clark arrived, her jersey was the one selling out. Her highlights were the ones plastered all over ESPN. Her press conferences were standing room only. That creates tension. Not because her teammates don't respect her game, they do, but because fame changes dynamics. Imagine showing up to work every day and watching the new hire get all the credit, even though you've been grinding for years. That's real. Then there's the pressure. When Clark struggled early in the season with turnovers and efficiency, the spotlight didn't dim. It got brighter. Every mistake went viral. Every hard foul against her got dissected on sports talk shows. For her teammates, that meant living inside a storm they never asked for. But here's the thing. Adversity also forges chemistry. By mid-season, you could see the Fever starting to click. Clark's passing opened up the floor for Boston. Mitchell got cleaner looks. The team wasn't just Caitlin and friends anymore. They were building something together. The locker room tension was real, but it was also necessary because it forced Indiana to grow up fast, to figure out how to balance individual fame with team success. And the way they handled that tension, that's what makes the next part so fascinating, because the Fever's future could go in two completely different directions. So where does this all go from here? The Fever and Caitlin Clark have two very different possible futures. Option 1, the Dynasty path. Clark continues to develop. Boston becomes her perfect inside partner, and Indiana builds a contender around them. Suddenly, the Fever aren't just a feel-good story. They're the team to beat. Think early 2000s Sparks or the modern Las Vegas Aces, championships, sellouts, a true era of dominance. Option 2, the burnout path. The hype gets too heavy. Clark wears down under constant pressure. The Fever front office fails to surround her with enough talent, and the team stagnates. Instead of a dynasty, she becomes a star without rings, a player carrying a league but never cashing in with a title. And history tells us that if the winning doesn't come, the spotlight can fade fast. And it's not just about Indiana. The league itself has paths here. If Clark's success sparks permanent investment, better TV deals, expansion, sponsorships, then this could be the tipping point that finally launches the WNBA into true mainstream status. But if momentum stalls, it risks becoming another what could have been. So which future will it be? That depends not just on Clark, but on how her team, her rivals, and the league itself respond to this once-in-a-generation moment. So here's the question, Her Hoops family. Are we watching the birth of the next WNBA dynasty, or just a historic hype wave? Will Caitlin Clark and the Fever turn this into a championship era? Or will the pressure, the rivalries, and the spotlight prove too much? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear if you think Indiana is building something legendary, or if this story has a different ending. And of course, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Her Hoops, and share it with another fan who's riding the Caitlin Clark wave with you. Because one thing's for sure, we are witnessing history in real time.